My hands were shaking as I stood in the small room, holding a piece of paper that could change my whole life. My heart was beating so fast that I could hear it in my ears. People were staring at me. Some were whispering. Some were smiling in a way that did not feel kind. Then I heard the words again. You are too old to start over. Those words hit me harder than any slap I had ever received. I looked up, my eyes burning with tears, and in that moment, something inside me broke. And something else woke up. But before I tell you how I showed them just how wrong they were, let me tell you who I am and how I got here. Before we go any further, if you love emotional and powerful stories like this, please take a second to subscribe to this channel. Like this video, turn on your notification bell, so you never miss a story that can touch your heart or change how you see life. And please tell me in the comments where you are watching from. I really want to know who is here with me. Now listen closely. My story did not start in that room. It started many years ago, when I learned what it feels like to be ignored, pushed aside, and told your time is over. I am a woman who spent most of her life taking care of others. I woke up early every day. I cooked, cleaned, worked, and sacrificed. I gave my youth, my strength, and my dreams to my family. I told myself, one day it will be my turn. But that day never seemed to come. As I grew older, people stopped asking me what I wanted. They stopped listening to my ideas. They started talking to me slowly, like I was a child. They laughed when I spoke about learning something new or trying something different. Why bother? They would say. At your age, just rest. You've done enough. But the truth is, I was tired of resting. I was tired of being invisible. The most painful moment came on a quiet evening, sitting in my own house, surrounded by people who were supposed to love me. I shared something from my heart. I said I wanted to start over. I wanted to build something for myself. I wanted to feel useful again. The room went silent. Then someone laughed. Not a loud laugh. A small one. The kind that cuts deep. Another voice followed, cold and sure. Be realistic. You're too old to start over. Everyone nodded. That night, I cried myself to sleep. Not because I believed them, but because part of me was afraid they were right. Days passed. Then weeks. I tried to forget the idea. I tried to act like I was fine with the life they had chosen for me. But every morning, when I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman who was still alive inside. A woman with ideas. A woman with fire. So I made a decision. I would try. Even if I failed. Even if they laughed again. Even if I stood alone. That decision led me to the moment I started this story with. Standing in that room. Holding that paper. Surrounded by people who had already decided my future without asking me. I could feel their eyes on me. I could hear their thoughts. She won't make it. She's too old. She should give up. My legs felt weak. My mouth was dry. For a second, I wanted to run. I wanted to apologize for dreaming too big. I wanted to say, you're right. I'll sit down and be quiet. But then I remembered every night I cried in silence. Every dream I buried. Every time I put myself last. I lifted my head. And that was when everything began to change. But just as I opened my mouth to speak, something unexpected happened. Something that made the room freeze. Something that made my heart drop all over again. I realized, this was not just about starting over. This was about proving that my life was not finished yet. And what happened next would shock everyone in that room. But I'm going to stop right here. Because before I tell you what I said, and before I show you how I proved them wrong, I want you to think about this one question. What would you do if the world decided your time was over, but your heart said it was just beginning? Stay with me. Because what happens next changes everything. After that moment in the room, I did not speak right away. I walked out slowly. Every step felt heavy, but inside me, something was burning. I could still hear their voices in my head. I could still see their faces. The way they looked at me like I was already finished. That night, I could not sleep. I lay on my bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of the fan turning again and again. My mind was full. Too full. Every memory I tried to forget came back, one after another. I remembered being young and full of dreams. I remembered saying, "One day, I will do something great." I remembered people smiling and saying, "You have time." Then I remembered growing older. The smiles slowly changed. The words slowly changed. "You should be careful. Don't stress yourself. That dream is for younger people." No one said it all at once. It happened slowly, like water dripping on stone until the stone breaks. I turned on my side and held my pillow tight. I asked myself a hard question. When did I stop believing in myself? The answer hurt. I stopped believing the day I started listening to everyone else more than my own heart. The next morning, I woke up before the sun. The house was quiet. Everyone else was asleep. That was the best time for me. No noise. No comments. No judgment. I made myself a cup of tea and sat at the small table by the window. The sky was still dark blue. Birds were just starting to sing. That was when I made another decision. I would not tell anyone what I was planning. I would not ask for permission. I would not explain myself. I would just start. I took out an old notebook I had hidden in the back of a drawer. The pages were yellow. Some were torn. I had written dreams in it years ago, then stopped. My hands shook as I opened it. On the first empty page, I wrote one sentence. "I am not too old to begin again." Writing those words made my chest feel tight. Tears dropped on the paper. But I did not stop. I began to write what I wanted. What I truly wanted. Not what people expected from me. Not what was safe. As the days passed, I started doing small things. Very small things. Things people would not notice. I woke up earlier. I learned quietly. I practiced when no one was watching. Some days, I was scared. My body would ache. My eyes would feel tired. A voice inside me would whisper, "Why are you doing this? You are tired. You are old." But another voice answered back, louder, "I am still here." One afternoon, someone noticed something had changed. They looked at me and said, "You look busy these days." I smiled and said nothing. Inside, my heart was racing. I knew I was stepping into unknown ground. I knew I could fail badly. And if I failed, the words would come again. "We told you so." That fear followed me everywhere. But something else followed me too. Hope. Then came the first test. I had to show what I had been working on. Just a small part. Just enough to see if I was dreaming or if this could actually work. As I prepared, my hands would not stop shaking. My stomach hurt. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, looking down. I remembered the room from before. The whispers. The laughter. I almost quit. But then I remembered the woman in the mirror. The one who still wanted to live fully. So I went. The place was not fancy. Just a simple room. A few people. Bright lights that made everything feel too real. I stood there, waiting. As I waited, I heard voices behind me. "She's really doing this? At her age. This won't end well." My face felt hot. My ears burned. I wanted to disappear. Then my name was called. I walked forward. Every step felt like I was walking through water. Slow and heavy. I could feel everyone watching me, measuring me, judging me. I took a deep breath and began. At first, my voice was small. But as I continued, something happened. I forgot about the room. I forgot about the people. I focused only on what I had worked so hard for. Minutes passed. Or maybe seconds. I was not sure. When I finished, there was silence. Not the bad kind. Not the laughing kind. Just silence. My heart dropped. I thought, this is it. I failed. Then someone spoke. And what they said made my hands go cold. Because it was not praise. It was not kindness. It was a challenge. A challenge that could either prove everyone wrong, or break me completely. And before I could respond, another voice joined in, saying something that made the entire room turn toward me. In that moment, I realized this journey was going to be harder than I ever imagined. And the next step could cost me everything I had left. The room felt smaller after those words were spoken. I stood there, frozen, trying to understand what was just said to me. The challenge hung in the air like a heavy cloud. My heart was pounding so loud I was sure everyone could hear it. The voice that challenged me was calm. Too calm. It was the kind of voice that came from someone who believed they already knew the ending of my story. They said, if you really believe you can do this, then prove it. Not here. Not with practice. But out there, where it matters. Some people nodded. Others crossed their arms. A few looked at me with pity. I swallowed hard. Inside my head, 1,000 thoughts were screaming at once. I am not ready. This is too much. They are setting me up to fail. But another thought pushed through the noise. If I walk away now, I will spend the rest of my life wondering what could have been. I looked up and said yes. The word came out before fear could stop it. Yes. A few people raised their eyebrows. Someone whispered, she's brave. Someone else whispered, she's foolish. I did not care. At least, I told myself I did not. That night, fear finally caught up with me. I sat alone in my room, the lights off, holding my notebook in my hands. The challenge replayed in my mind again and again. This was no longer something I could hide. No longer something I could do quietly in the early mornings. Now, people would be watching, waiting, hoping I would fail. The next few days were some of the hardest of my life. I woke up before dawn and worked until my body begged me to stop. My back hurt. My eyes burned. Sometimes my hands would cramp. There were moments I had to sit down just to breathe. And still, the doubts came. You should slow down. You are pushing yourself too much. This is dangerous at your age. I heard those words from others. But worse, I heard them from inside my own head. One morning, I woke up and felt pain shoot through my leg. Sharp and sudden. I sat on the edge of my bed, holding my breath. Is this my body telling me to stop? I stared at the floor for a long time. Then I stood up. Slowly. Carefully. The pain was still there, but so was my will. I kept going. As the days passed, the pressure grew. People started asking questions. They wanted updates. They wanted to know if I was really serious. Some smiled when they asked. Some smirked. You're still doing that thing? You haven't changed your mind? Why don't you just relax and enjoy life? I smiled back and said nothing. They did not need to understand. What they did not see were the nights I cried quietly into my pillow. The mornings I sat in silence, asking God for strength. The moments I almost called it quits. Then something unexpected happened. Someone reached out to me. They were not loud. They did not make a big show. They simply sat beside me one afternoon and said, I see you trying. Those words felt like water on dry ground. They did not say I would win. They did not say I was amazing. They just said they saw me. For the first time, I did not feel completely alone. As the big day came closer, my fear grew sharper. The challenge was no longer far away. It was right in front of me. The night before, I barely slept. I kept imagining everything going wrong. I imagined forgetting everything I had learned. I imagined my body failing me. I imagined the laughter afterward. But I also imagined something else. I imagined standing tall. I imagined silence again, but this time followed by something different. Respect. Morning came too fast. I got dressed slowly, carefully. I looked at myself in the mirror. My face showed lines from years of living. My eyes showed tiredness, but they also showed strength. I whispered to myself, "No matter what happens, you showed up." The place was full when I arrived. More people than before. Some faces I recognized. Some I did not. I felt small. As I waited my turn, my heart beat so hard it hurt. My hands were cold. My mouth was dry. Then I heard my name. Everything around me faded. I walked forward. I began. At first, everything felt wrong. My voice shook. My mind went blank for a moment. Panic rose in my chest. Then I took a deep breath. I remembered why I started. I remembered the notebook. I remembered the nights of doubt and the mornings of hope. Something settled inside me. I continued. This time, my voice grew stronger. My movements became sure. I forgot about my age. I forgot about the whispers. I was just me. When I finished, I felt empty, like I had given everything I had. Silence filled the room again. My heart dropped. Then I saw faces changing, arms uncrossing, eyes widening. But before anyone could say a word, something happened that made my stomach twist. One of the people in charge stood up. They looked straight at me and said something that changed the air in the room completely. Something that made me realize this was no longer just a test. It was a battle. And the next step would decide if I truly had a future, or if this was where my journey ended. When that person stood up, the room went so quiet I could hear my own breathing. They did not rush their words. They looked at me for a long time, as if they were weighing something heavy in their mind. That silence was worse than shouting. It made my chest feel tight. Finally, they spoke. "This is not what we expected." My heart dropped. I prepared myself for the worst. I told myself, here it comes. The polite rejection. The soft way of saying go home. But then they continued. And that is exactly the problem. Murmurs spread through the room. People shifted in their seats. I felt dizzy. They went on, "What you just showed us. It is raw. It is unfinished. And yes, it has flaws." Every word hit me like a small stone. I lowered my eyes. Then they said something I will never forget. But it also has something many people here do not have. I looked up slowly. "Life," they said. "Depth. Truth." My throat tightened. The room felt different now. Warmer. Dangerous in a new way. They explained that the challenge was not over. In fact, it had just begun. I was being given a chance to go further, but under conditions that would push me harder than ever. "This will not be easy," they warned. "You will be tested. You will be doubted. And if you fail, there will be no second chances." I nodded. I did not trust my voice. As I walked back to my seat, my legs felt weak. People were staring again, but this time their looks were mixed with confusion. Some looked impressed. Some looked angry. That scared me. Anger meant I was no longer invisible. Over the next few days, my life changed quickly. My schedule became tight. My days were long. I was expected to improve fast. Very fast. There was no special treatment for my age. No sympathy for my tired body. If anything, the pressure felt heavier on me. "You chose this," I reminded myself whenever my strength felt low. But there were moments when doubt crept in like a shadow. I would see younger people moving easily, learning quickly. I would hear them laugh, confident and relaxed. And I would feel my chest tighten again. "Maybe they are right," the voice whispered. "Maybe I am too late." One afternoon, after a long and exhausting day, I overheard something that stopped me in my tracks. Two people were talking nearby. They did not know I could hear them. "Why are they even wasting time on her?" one said. "She's old. She won't last." the other replied. They're just being kind. This won't go far. My hands trembled. I went home that day feeling smaller than I had in weeks. I sat on my bed and stared at the wall. The room felt empty. I felt tired in a way sleep could not fix. For the first time since I started, I thought about quitting. Just quietly stepping away. No explanation. No embarrassment. No more pain. I picked up my notebook and flipped through the pages. My early words stared back at me. I am not too old to begin again. I closed the book and pressed it to my chest. Tears fell. I'm trying, I whispered. I really am. That night, something unexpected happened. Someone knocked on my door. I opened it slowly, not knowing what to expect. The person standing there surprised me. They looked at me with serious eyes and said, I heard what people are saying about you. My heart sank. They are wrong, they continued. I did not answer. I did not trust myself to speak. They went on. You have something rare. And some people don't like that. It makes them uncomfortable. Those words gave me a small spark of strength. They will test you harder, the person said. Not because you are weak, but because you are different. After they left, I sat in silence for a long time. I realized something important. This was no longer just about proving I could start over. This was about surviving in a place that did not believe I belonged. The next test came sooner than I expected. We were given a task that seemed impossible. The rules were strict. The time was short. The expectations were high. As I looked at what was required, my heart raced. This was the kind of task that could expose every weakness I had. I could hear people whispering again. She won't finish. She'll break. This is where it ends. I took a deep breath and began. Hours passed. My body ached. My mind felt heavy. I made mistakes and fixed them. Then made more. At one point, my hands shook so badly I had to stop. I closed my eyes and whispered, please, just let me get through this. When time was finally up, I stepped back and looked at what I had done. It was not perfect, but it was honest. As everything was being reviewed, I stood quietly, my heart pounding. Then someone said something that made my stomach twist in fear. We need to talk, they said, looking directly at me. My mind raced. Was this the end? Had I failed? Were they about to tell me to leave? I followed them, my legs feeling like they could give out at any moment. We stopped in a quiet place. They turned to me. And what they said next, I was not prepared for. Because it was not about my work. It was about my age. And the choice they were about to make would change everything. When they said it was about my age, my heart dropped straight into my stomach. I stood there, not knowing whether to speak or stay silent. The quiet felt heavy. I could feel sweat on my palms. My mind raced through every possible outcome. They folded their hands and looked at me carefully. You are older than everyone else here, they said. That is a fact. I nodded slowly. I had known this from the beginning. I had felt it in every stare, every whisper, every pause when I walked into a room. They continued, we need to know if you can handle what comes next. The words were calm, but they cut deep. I asked softly, what do you mean? They took a breath. The next phase will demand more time, more energy, and more pressure. We don't want to carry someone who might break halfway. Break. That word stayed with me. I wanted to defend myself. I wanted to list everything I had survived in my life. The years of sacrifice. The pain. The nights I cried alone and still woke up the next day to keep going. But I knew something important. If I begged, I would lose. If I argued, I would look weak. So I spoke the truth. I have broken before, I said. And I am still standing. They looked at me closely, as if searching my face for a lie. I went on, my voice shaking but steady enough. I know my body is not young. I know I may be slower, but I will not quit. If I fail, it will not be because I did not try." Silence followed. Then they said something that surprised me. "We will give you one more chance." Relief rushed through me so fast my knees almost gave out. "But," they added, "this chance will be harder than what we give anyone else." I nodded. I expected that. From that day on, the pressure doubled. My days became longer. My rest became shorter. The expectations were higher, and mistakes were not forgiven easily. Sometimes, I felt like I was being watched, waiting for me to slip. And sometimes, I did slip. There were days I went home feeling like a failure. Days when my body hurt so much I had to lie down and stare at the ceiling, wondering how much longer I could do this. One evening, after a particularly hard day, I sat alone and cried. Not loud. Just quiet tears. I asked myself again, why am I doing this? The answer came slowly. Because if I walk away now, I will prove them right. The next test was announced suddenly. No time to prepare. No warning. We were told, tomorrow, you will show us what you are made of. My heart raced. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying every mistake I had made. I kept thinking about my age. About my limits. Morning came too quickly. The room was full again. Tension was thick in the air. Everyone knew this test mattered. I looked around and noticed something strange. Some people avoided my eyes. Some looked curious. Some looked almost nervous. That was new. When it was my turn, my chest tightened. I stepped forward, my legs heavy. I began. Halfway through, something went wrong. Very wrong. My mind went blank. Panic hit me like a wave. My heart started racing. My hands shook. For a second, I thought I might collapse. I could hear whispers again. There it is. She's done. This is too much for her. I closed my eyes. In that moment, I remembered every time life had knocked me down. Every time I thought I was finished. And how I still stood up. I opened my eyes and continued. It was not smooth. It was not perfect. But it was real. When I finished, I felt drained. Empty. Like I had given my last drop. The room was quiet again. Then something unexpected happened. Someone started clapping. Slowly. Carefully. Then another person joined. And another. The sound filled the room. I stood there, frozen, tears in my eyes. But just when hope began to rise in my chest, the clapping stopped. One of the leaders stood up. They raised a hand for silence. And then they said something that made my heart drop all over again. "This changes things," they said. The room froze. I felt my breath catch. Was this good? Or was this the end? They continued, because now, we must decide if we are ready to take a risk. A risk. On me. I could feel every eye on me. I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on my chest. They told me to wait outside. As the door closed behind me, my legs finally gave out, and I leaned against the wall, shaking. This was it. Everything I had worked for came down to this decision. And I had no control over what would happen next. The hallway was cold and quiet. I leaned against the wall, trying to steady my breathing. My legs felt weak, and my heart would not slow down. Every second felt like a minute. Every sound made me jump. Behind that closed door, people were talking about me, judging me, deciding my future. I pressed my hands together and whispered, "Please." I did not know who I was speaking to. God. Fate. Myself. I just knew I had come too far to walk away now. As I waited, memories flooded my mind. I remembered being told to be patient all my life. To wait my turn. To let others go first. I remembered watching younger people chase their dreams while I stood back, holding everyone else up. And now, here I was again, waiting. The door finally opened. They called my name. My heart jumped into my throat as I walked back into the room. The air felt thick. Everyone was watching me. They asked me to sit. I did. One of them spoke first. "You surprised us." I held my breath. "We did not expect that level of strength," they continued. "Especially under pressure. Especially at your age," they did not say, but I heard it anyway. Another voice joined in. "But strength alone is not enough." My chest tightened. They explained that the next stage would involve public exposure. Real pressure. Real judgment. Not just from people in that room, but from the outside world. "You will be criticized," they warned. Harshly. I nodded. I had already been criticized my whole life. Then they said something that made my stomach twist. "If you move forward, there will be no hiding your age." There it was again. My age. They went on. "People will use it against you. They will doubt you. They will question why you are even here." I thought about the whispers, the laughs, the looks. I took a deep breath and said, "They already do." The room went quiet. After a long pause, they made their decision. "We will let you continue." Relief rushed through me so fast I almost cried. "But," they added, "this will be your hardest test yet." From that moment on, everything moved fast. I was given very little time to prepare. Instructions came quickly. Expectations were clear and unforgiving. This was no longer just about potential. It was about performance. The days that followed were some of the hardest I had ever known. I woke up exhausted. I went to bed exhausted. My body protested at every step. My muscles hurt. My head throbbed. There were moments I had to sit down just to catch my breath. People watched closely. Some waited for me to fail. I could feel it. Then came the day I had been dreading. The day I would be seen. The room was bigger this time. Brighter. Louder. Filled with strangers. I stood backstage, my hands cold, my heart pounding. Someone leaned toward me and whispered, "Nervous?" I nodded. They smiled and said, "You should be." That did not help. As I waited to be called, I heard people talking. "She's brave. She's crazy. She's too old for this." Those words cut deep. My name was called. I stepped forward. The lights were blinding. I could not see faces clearly, but I could feel their eyes on me. I started slowly. At first, my voice shook. My thoughts raced. My body felt stiff. Then something inside me shifted. I remembered the hallway, the waiting, the fear. And I realized something important. I had already survived the worst part. Everything after this was just noise. I continued. My voice grew stronger. My movements became steady. I spoke from a place deeper than skill or training. I spoke from life. When I finished, the room was silent. For a moment, I thought I had failed. Then I heard a reaction I did not expect. It was not loud applause. It was not shouting. It was a quiet, heavy silence, the kind that means people are thinking. That scared me more than anything. Later, as I walked off, someone stopped me. They looked serious. "You made people uncomfortable," they said. My heart sank. Then they added, "That is not a bad thing." They explained that I had challenged expectations, that I had forced people to confront their own ideas about age and limits. But they also warned me. When you challenge people like that, they push back. I felt a chill run through me. Sure enough, the backlash came fast. Comments, opinions, criticism. People talked about my age more than my work. "She should know her place. Why doesn't she just rest? This is embarrassing." I tried not to read them. But some words still found their way into my heart. That night, I sat alone, staring at my phone, feeling smaller again. For the first time since I started, I felt truly exposed. And afraid. The next morning, I was called in again. This time, their faces were serious. They said, "What happens next will define you." My heart pounded. They explained that there would be one more major step. A decision that could either push me forward or end everything. As they spoke, I realized something frightening. This was no longer just about proving I was not too old. This was about whether I was strong enough to keep going when the whole world was watching. And the choice they were about to offer me would test me in a way I never expected. When they said the next choice would define me, my heart started beating so hard it almost hurt. They told me to sit down. I could feel my hands shaking as I lowered myself into the chair. Everyone in the room looked serious. No smiles. No soft words. This was real now. One of them spoke slowly, carefully, like every word mattered. "You have two options." I lifted my head. "The first option," they said, "is the safe one." They explained that I could step back into a quieter role. Less pressure. Less attention. Less risk. I would still be part of the process, but I would not be in the spotlight anymore. "It will protect you," they said. "Your body. Your emotions. Your dignity." Dignity. That word hit me hard. Then they told me the second option. "If you continue forward," they said, "you will be fully exposed. Your age will be public. Your story will be public. And the criticism will get worse." They paused before adding, "Much worse." The room was silent. I stared at the floor, my mind spinning. The safe option sounded comfortable. Quiet. Peaceful. No more whispers. No more cruel comments. No more pressure to prove anything. Just rest. But something about it felt like a slow goodbye. I asked a simple question. "If I take the safe option," I said, "will I still be moving forward?" They looked at each other before answering. "In a way," one of them said. I nodded slowly. Then I asked the question that scared me the most. "And if I take the second option?" They did not answer right away. Finally, someone said, "Then there is no turning back." I closed my eyes. In that moment, I thought about my whole life. Every time I chose what was easy instead of what was true. Every time I stayed quiet to keep the peace. Every time I told myself, "It's too late." I realized something painful. If I chose the safe option now, I would spend the rest of my life wondering what would have happened if I had been brave. I opened my eyes. "I choose the second option," I said. The room went still. One of them asked, "Are you sure?" I nodded. Yes. My voice shook, but my heart felt clear. From that moment on, everything changed again. They wasted no time. My schedule became overwhelming. Interviews. Preparation. Long days that turned into longer nights. There was no space to hide anymore. People wanted to know everything about me. My age. My past. My failures. Some asked questions with kindness. Others asked with judgment hidden behind smiles. "Why now? What took you so long? Do you really think this will work?" I answered the best I could. But not everyone liked my answers. The comments grew louder. "You're inspiring," some said. "You're delusional," others replied. "This is sad," a few wrote. I tried to stay strong, but some nights, I broke down. I would sit alone in the dark, wondering if I had made a terrible mistake. My body was tired. My heart was tired. One evening, after a long and draining day, I almost quit. I sat on my bed, my bag still on the floor, and said out loud, "I can't do this anymore." The words scared me. I picked up my old notebook again. The same one I had started this journey with. I read every page. The doubts. The hopes. The promises I made to myself. I stopped at the first sentence I had written months ago. "I am not too old to begin again." I cried. Not because I was weak, but because I was still here. The next day brought another test. This one was public. Very public. I was told, people will see this. They will judge every move. My hands trembled, but I nodded. When I stepped into that space, I could feel the tension immediately. Cameras. Lights. Eyes everywhere. I took a deep breath and began. Halfway through, something happened that I did not expect. I saw someone in the crowd crying. That moment almost broke me. I realized then that this was no longer just about me. My story was touching people who felt invisible too. People who had been told their time was over. That realization gave me strength. I finished strong. But as I walked away, I overheard something that made my chest tighten. Someone said, "She's becoming a problem." I froze. A problem? Later that day, I was called into another meeting. The atmosphere was tense. They told me the truth. Not everyone was happy with my progress. Not everyone wanted me to succeed. Some thought I was disrupting the system, challenging rules that had been in place for a long time. You are forcing change, they said. And change scares people. That scared me too. They warned me that obstacles would be placed in my path, that the next phase would not be fair. As I left that meeting, my heart felt heavy. I realized something terrifying. The fight ahead was no longer just about skill or age. It was about power. And the next move someone was about to make could either push me to a level I never imagined, or destroy everything I had built. That night, as I lay awake, my phone buzzed with a message I was not expecting. I opened it. And what I read made my blood run cold. Because it was clear proof that someone was working against me. And whatever they were planning, it was coming soon. My hands trembled as I stared at the message on my phone. I read it once. Then again. My chest felt tight, like someone was pressing down on it. The message was short, but it carried a heavy meaning. It was not friendly. It was not supportive. It was a warning. You should know when to stop. That was all it said. No name. No explanation. I sat on the edge of my bed, the room spinning slightly. My first thought was fear. My second was anger. Who would send something like that? Why now? I locked my phone and placed it face down, but the words stayed in my mind. That night, sleep did not come easily. Every sound made me jump. Every shadow felt darker. I kept wondering if this was just talk, or something more. By morning, I was exhausted. But I did not tell anyone about the message. Not yet. I had learned something on this journey. Not everyone who smiles wants you to win. The next day was harder than usual. The atmosphere had changed. I could feel it. Conversations stopped when I walked by. People avoided eye contact. I felt like an outsider again. During preparation, I noticed small things going wrong. Things that had never been a problem before. Instructions were unclear. Time was cut short. Support was suddenly missing. At first, I thought it was in my head. Then it happened again. And again. By midday it was clear. This was not an accident. Someone was making this harder on purpose. I felt a familiar feeling rise inside me. That old voice. Maybe this is your sign to leave. I clenched my jaw and kept going. Later, I was pulled aside and given feedback that felt unfair. You're falling behind, they said. You seem distracted, they added. I wanted to scream. I was not falling behind. I was being pushed. But I stayed calm. I listened. I nodded. Inside, my heart was racing. That evening, I finally told someone I trusted about the message. They looked serious. This is not okay, they said. You need to be careful. The word careful made my stomach turn. For the first time, I wondered if this was bigger than I thought. The next public event arrived quickly. Too quickly. There was no time to recover. No time to breathe. I stood backstage, trying to calm myself. My hands were cold. My body felt heavy. As I waited, I noticed something strange. My name was not called when it should have been. I looked around, confused. Then someone approached me and whispered, "There's been a change." A change? My heart skipped. They explained that I would go last. Last meant more pressure. Last meant people were tired. Last meant less patience. I knew exactly what this was. Another test. Or another trap. When it was finally my turn, the room felt restless. People shifted in their seats. Some checked their phones. I swallowed my fear and stepped forward. I started strong. But halfway through, the sound system failed. My voice cut off. Gasps filled the room. I stood there, frozen. Technicians rushed around. People whispered. I could feel panic rising. This had never happened before. Someone said, "We may need to stop." Stop. That word felt like a knife. If I stopped, I would lose momentum. If I waited too long, people would walk away. I made a quick decision. I continued without the sound. I raised my voice. I spoke from my chest. The room grew quiet. People leaned forward. Even without the system, they could hear me. When the sound finally returned, I was already deep into it. I finished with my heart pounding. The reaction was mixed. Some clapped. Some looked unsure. But I had done it. Backstage, someone pulled me aside. "That was risky," they said. "You could have embarrassed yourself." I looked at them and replied, "I was already embarrassed when I was told I was too old." They said nothing. Later that night, the message on my phone was gone. Deleted. That scared me more than if it had stayed. The next day, I was called into a meeting. This time, the room felt colder. They told me directly, "There are concerns about you." I asked, "Concerns about what?" They hesitated. "About your influence," they said. Influence. They explained that my story was gaining attention. That people were talking. That some felt inspired. But others felt threatened. "You are changing the narrative," they said. "And not everyone is comfortable with that." I realized then that this was no longer just personal. This was political. They told me there would be a final evaluation soon. One that would decide everything. As I left the room, my phone buzzed again. A new message. This one was even shorter. Final warning. My heart sank. I stood there, staring at the screen, realizing that the next step could be dangerous. Not just emotionally, but in ways I had never imagined. And whatever was coming next, it would be the biggest test of my life. The words "final warning" stayed on my screen long after I locked my phone. I felt cold all over. Not just scared, alert. Like an animal that knows something bad is close. For the first time since this journey began, I asked myself a dangerous question. Is this worth it? Not the dream. Not the message. Not the people I was inspiring. But the cost. I had faced doubt before. I had faced insults. I had faced being laughed at. But this felt different. This felt personal. That night, I did not sleep. I sat by the window, watching the dark sky slowly change. My mind kept replaying every strange moment from the past few days. The missing support. The unfair feedback. The sound system failure. The messages. Someone wanted me to stop. And they were not trying to hide it anymore. In the morning, I made a decision. I would not run. But I would not be careless either. I reported the messages. The response was calm. Too calm. "We'll look into it," they said. No urgency. No concern. That told me everything I needed to know. I was on my own. The final evaluation was announced that same day. The room went quiet when the news spread. Everyone knew what it meant. This was the last gate. Pass it, and everything changes. Fail it, and you disappear. No second chances. No explanations. As the day approached, The pressure became unbearable. People stopped whispering and started staring. Some avoided me completely. Some watched me like they were waiting for something bad to happen. Others surprised me. Strangers came up to me quietly. "You don't know me," one said. "But thank you." Another whispered, "You made me believe I'm not finished." Those words kept me going. But fear still walked beside me. The night before the evaluation, I packed my bag slowly. Each movement felt heavy. I looked around my room, wondering if this was the last night I would be here. I touched my notebook one last time and placed it gently inside my bag. Whatever happened, I wanted it with me. The morning came. Bright. Loud. Unforgiving. The evaluation space was larger than ever before. More people. More eyes. More judgment. This was it. As I waited, something strange happened. One of the people in charge approached me. They leaned in and said quietly, "You don't have to do this." I looked at them, confused. "There's still time to step back," they added. "No one would blame you." I understood then. This was not kindness. This was fear. They were giving me one last chance to remove myself. I shook my head. "I'm doing this," I said. They sighed and walked away. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might faint. Then my name was called. I stepped forward. The lights were harsh. The room felt huge. I took my place and waited for the signal to begin. But it did not come. Instead, one of the evaluators spoke. "There's been a concern raised," they said. My stomach dropped. They continued, "Before we proceed, we need to address something." The room buzzed with tension. They looked directly at me. "This process must be fair," they said. "And there are questions about whether you should still be here." Gasps filled the room. I felt my knees weaken. They went on, "Some believe you are receiving attention for the wrong reasons." I knew what that meant. My age. My story. My influence. They asked me to respond. I stood there, my heart racing, my throat tight. This was not part of the evaluation. This was a test of something else. I spoke slowly. "I am here because I earned my place," I said. "Not because of my age. Not because of my story. But because I showed up and did the work." The room was silent. Then someone else spoke. "If that's true," they said, "then you won't mind if we change the rules." My blood ran cold. They announced a sudden change. No preparation. No adjustment time. No mercy. I would have to perform under conditions no one else had faced. It was clear now. This was the moment they had been waiting for. A setup. If I failed, they could say, "We gave her a chance." If I succeeded, they would lose control. I looked around the room. Some faces looked uncomfortable. Some looked excited. Some looked relieved. I took a deep breath. This was bigger than me now. The signal was finally given. I began. Within moments, I realized how serious the change was. Everything was harder. Faster. More demanding. My body screamed. My mind struggled to keep up. I made a mistake. Then another. Whispers started. My heart pounded. Halfway through, something inside me snapped, not in fear, but in clarity. I stopped trying to please them. I stopped trying to prove anything. I focused on truth. I adjusted. I adapted. I pushed through pain and doubt. When I reached the final moment, my vision blurred with tears. I gave everything I had left. When it was over, I stood there shaking. The room was silent. No clapping. No reaction. Just silence. Then one of the evaluators stood up. Their face was unreadable. They opened their mouth to speak. And in that exact moment, someone else interrupted. They rushed into the room and whispered something urgent into the evaluator's ear. The evaluator's expression changed instantly. They looked at me. Then at the room. And then they said words that made my heart stop completely. We need to pause this evaluation immediately. The room exploded into confusion. I stood there, frozen. Because I knew, deep in my bones, whatever had just happened was not small. And the truth that was about to come out could either finally set me free, or end everything I fought for. The room was loud with confusion. People stood up. Voices overlapped. Some asked questions. Others looked scared. I stood in the middle of it all, frozen. My heart was beating so fast I felt dizzy. The evaluator raised a hand for silence. Slowly, the room calmed. They took a deep breath and spoke. We have just received information that changes everything. My knees felt weak. They looked around the room, then back at me. For weeks, they said, there have been complaints, messages, and interference in this process. A wave of murmurs spread. They continued, someone has been working behind the scenes to influence outcomes, to block progress, to silence voices they found uncomfortable. My chest tightened. This was real. This includes anonymous messages, unfair changes, and deliberate obstacles, they said. Every word felt heavy. Then they said the words I never expected to hear. We have confirmed that these actions were not coming from you. The room went quiet. My eyes filled with tears. They went on. In fact, what we discovered is that your presence exposed a bigger problem. Bias. Fear of change. Fear of age. Some people shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Others looked down. The evaluator turned fully toward me. You were not failing, they said. You were being tested unfairly. I could not breathe. They explained that the evaluation had been paused not because of me, but because of an investigation that was already underway. The process will resume, they said, but under corrected conditions. My heart jumped. Then they said something that changed my life forever. Based on everything we have seen, your work, your resilience, and the impact you've made, we do not need to see more. The room gasped. They smiled slightly. You have already proven what you came here to prove. Tears rolled down my face. I thought about every night I cried alone. Every time I was told to sit down. Every time someone said my time was over. The evaluator stood tall and said clearly, so everyone could hear. She was never too old to start over. The room erupted. This time, the applause was real. Loud. Long. I stood there shaking, covering my mouth, unable to believe it. Later, away from the noise, I sat alone for a moment. My hands were still trembling. Someone came to sit beside me. You changed something today, they said. I shook my head. I just refused to disappear. They smiled. Exactly. As I packed my things, I held my notebook one last time. I opened to the first page. I am not too old to begin again. I smiled through my tears. Because now, I knew it was true. This was not just my ending. It was my beginning. And if you are listening to this story right now, I want you to hear me clearly. If someone has told you that you are too old, too late, too forgotten, they are wrong. As long as you are breathing, your story is not over. And before you go, please do me a favor. If this story touched your heart, like this video so more people can hear it. Subscribe to the channel for more powerful, emotional stories like this one. Turn on your notifications so you never miss a new story. And please, tell me in the comments. Where are you watching from, and what dream are you still holding on to? Because someone out there needs to hear your story too. Thank you for staying with me until the end.